The spirit of heritage, using selected artifacts to read the material history and conflicting memories in colonial era architecture in the SADC region. The study therefore attempts to portray the possibilities and opportunities of new orders that may emerge from these architectural legacies if they are reconfigured, redefined, or transformed, rather than simply removing them or demolishing them. Chisvo played an important role in the social history of Pretoria and South Africa. In its early days, it was used as an auction site, sports field, and later it also served as a venue for some anti-apartheid protests. There were also some national celebrations and swearing in of heads of ceremonies that were held here. It is also the setting for the Rivonia trial, which led to the imprisonment of Nelson Mandela and his co-accused. Church Square originated from a succession of 3 churches that were built in the middle of the square, around about between 1850 and 1945. The first church was replaced by a larger church, which after burning down was replaced by another one in 1885 there, which was demolished in 1904 after the funeral of Paul Kruger was conducted in it. The churches were built at the original point of the square, as it was the center of Afrikaans community. The statue of Paul Kruger has been defaced, vandalized, attacked, and protested against countless of times, to a point that the city of Tshwane have erected a Apart from removing the plinth and the statue of Paul Kruger from the central position of the square, the current statue can also be brought into present context by complementing the statue of Paul Kruger with a statue of an African leader. This obviously will bring a symbolism of acknowledging both the Afrikaners and the local leaders' contributions in establishing and the development of democratic South Africa. And alternatively, the African leader could be a woman standing next to Paul Kruger, or a woman standing on her own on the statue, and this will bring in the message of women underrepresentation and issues of gender-based violence. The Voortrekker Monument is an iconic and prominent landmark that stands out on the Pretoria horizon. It was designed by architect Gerard Modic and built between the years 1937 and 1949. The monument was built in honor of and is also a memorial to the Voortrekkers and the great trek that left the Cape Colony in search of freedom from the British rule and authority. This position gave a sense of sacredness and isolatedness to the monument as it stands on its own on the horizon. But in order to counter that and neutralize that, one would propose to develop a city around the monument with buildings and infrastructure that competes with the monument both in terms of height and texture. A summary of the history of the Great Trek, the battles fought, challenges faced, and also lifestyles and treaties entered is depicted within the walls of the monument. The cenotaph, or the grave, occupies the central position of the monument and is situated at the center of the whole of the outer. And by so doing, it then becomes the focal point of the monument. It can be viewed from the Hall of Heroes, and it can also be viewed from the dome, which is at the top of the building, from where one can actually view like the whole. Every year on 16 December, exactly at 12 o'clock during the day, a ray of light shines through the oculus on the dome, and it illuminates the inscription that is on the cenotaph, which is Ons Frijo, South Africa. And unfortunately, on this day, this is where the light was, not exactly on the cenotaph. This ray of light can be interpreted as a symbol of God's blessing upon the work and the aspirations of the portrays. Symbolic marble floor of the hall consists of ever-widening circular patterns, which looks like ripple effects of a stone that has been cast into water and producing a rainbow pattern. Since South Africa is now being regarded as a rainbow nation, we can then introduce a rainbow pattern on the floor. On the 13th of September 1980, the Union Jack was first raised at Fort Salisbury, which is now called Harare. This is the capital city of Zimbabwe. It was raised to mark the British settlement on the Mashonaland territory by Chisvo roads of the pioneer column. The place where the flag was hoisted then became the Chisvo Square, and it's also known as the Africa Unity Square. We can introduce a new nature on site by introducing a water garden on the northern side of the square. This can achieve it by importing trees and building ponds, filling them with water, which can also give some psychological and healing within the busy central business district. Allowing colonial-era architectural legacies to be transformed, recontextualized, is an acknowledgement that meaning changes over time, especially when one looks at it from a post-colonial vantage point. Because when you look at it, the ideologies that inform the construction of these monuments, these statues, were having a sense of immortality, that things are going to continue to be the way they are. And they didn't foresee the coming of democracy, the coming of freedom, the coming of being formed because of recontextualizing, reconfiguring these monuments, statues, and parks. Like, for example, you realize that architects, of these statues, they were thinking of immortality, but when we reconfigure them, there's an opportunity to continue to a point that architects of every generation would have the opportunity to recontextualize in their own context, and therefore we have a form of architecture that continues rather than ends with an era. But it's architectural legacies, the transformation of these monuments, statues, and public squares. One will realize that there is need to have policy change to reform the policies that govern and protect these kind of monuments and statues. A pragmatic approach to this will actually enable to create a foundation and to create a system that allows the continual reformation and continual transformation of such policies. Why? Because keeping them in a fixed state as they are, as I have presented through the document, it simply brings a sense of outdatedness. It continues to raise a lot of conflicts, a lot of contention, and a lot of controversy. So therefore, if there is a policy that is well set and well established to allow further and more transformation, which then acts as a precedent, then acts as a foundation upon which professionals conservationists, and even the patrons of these monuments to implement further changes as time evolves and as time moves, rather than having policies that simply protect them in the state that they are, irregardless of the controversies, irregardless of the conflict that they raise, the memory